Good morning. I had to find my Facebook Live button this morning. They took me about 20 minutes to find it. They actually hid it from me. And now the only way I can go live is from my profile. So I don't know if anybody sees this or not. But just the same, I'm going to go ahead and go live. Because I feel obligated, duty bound. Oh, look at that. There is somebody there. Yeah. So they hid the live button today, and I had to go find it. And it actually is now on my actual... I got to click on my image icon, go to my actual Facebook wall to find the live button. It's no longer just freely on the page anymore. So it took me about 20 minutes to figure that out because I was looking all over for it. I don't know what that's all about, but I found it rather interesting why they would move the Facebook Live button from where it's normally positioned to actually on my wall now, which is interesting. I've never had to do that before, but this is where we're at. And again, today, instead of reading through all the cases, because I'm getting tired of sounding like a damn auctioneer, somebody has asked if I wouldn't mind sharing my screen while I go through things, and I absolutely don't mind doing that at all. These are some of the case precedents, not case law, case precedents that I use in my documents, all right? And so I want to share them with you because even if... Let's just say, I've had a lot of lawyers tell me, oh yeah, Derek, one of those case sites you cited, did you even go look it up? I said, no, but I found this and it logically, reasonably made sense. It seems to be supported by sound doctrine and principle, so whether or not they really said it, I could give two fucking shits. And the lawyer's like, well, if you're going to quote a case, though, you want to make sure that it says what it says. I agree with that. But even if the case doesn't say that, let's just say, for instance, this case here, and you look it up, and it actually doesn't say this verbatim. Just listen to it for a second. Silence can only be equated with fraud where there is a legal or moral duty to speak, or where an inquiry left unanswered would be intentionally misleading. Now, even if this motherfucking case does not say that, let's just say we take that out of the equation and we just read the words before us. It doesn't matter whether that case says that or not, because this sound doctrine and principle rings true no matter what area you're in or where you're at in life. Silence, when you have a moral and ethical and lawful and legal duty to speak, will always equate to fraud or intentionally misleading somebody. When you know the answer, let's just say you see 1,000 people getting ready to drink out of a well that you know damn good and well doesn't have drinkable water in it. Maybe the substance in there is liquid and it's clear, but let's say you watch somebody else drink out of it and they got fatally ill from drinking that water. You have a moral, ethical, lawful, and legal obligation to intentionally let people know that, right? And that's just my thought process on it. So anyway, silence can only be equated with fraud where there is a legal or moral duty to speak, or where an inquiry left unanswered would be intentionally misleading. Silence can only be equated with fraud when there is a legal or moral duty to speak, or when an inquiry left unanswered would be intentionally misleading. We cannot condone the shocking conduct. If that is the case, we hope our message is clear. This sort of deception will not be tolerated, and if this is routine, it should be corrected immediately. All right? I can only imagine some former justices sitting on the bench thinking, what in the fucking world is going on with our society? Here we are. Maybe they were in Washington, D.C. Maybe this is... These are the Supreme Court justices of the United States Supreme Court, and they're thinking, this case might have arisen out of Texas or something. And they're thinking, by golly, what the hell is wrong with these people down in Texas? If this is the conduct that our fellow justices are involved in, or fellow servants are involved in by not answering inquiries, let's send them a firm message. This sort of deception will not be tolerated, and if this is routine, basically they're saying, if this is the kind of conduct you engage in fucking day to day, it should be corrected fucking immediately, all right? Fraud and deceit may arise from silence where there is a duty to speak the truth, as well as from speaking an untruth. All right? It goes without any explanation. You can discern from the context exactly what they're talking about. It's the same reason your dad might have popped you in your mouth or on your ass when you were a kid being untruthful, because he wasn't going to raise a liar and a fucking thief. Those are the two things that he had zero respect for, right? In regards to courts of inferior jurisdiction, if the record does not show up, if the record does not show up on its face, the facts necessary to give jurisdiction. Well, what are those facts, ladies and gentlemen? First of all, there must be a real party in interest. Okay, there must be an aggrieved man or woman coming forward stating who, what, how, when, where, and why they were caused harm. Period. Harm, damage, or loss. All right? And those are the prerequisites for a court gaining this beautiful thing called jurisdiction. All right? They will be presumed not to have existed. When a judge acts where he or she does not have, this magical word again, jurisdiction to act, the judge is engaged in an act or acts of treason. All right? They are limited in the ability and the power that they have to wield. All right? And one of those fundamental principles, again, is there must be a real party to the case, a real moving party. Okay? Can't be just some lawyer sitting there with an empty chair next to him. Okay? This judge, if he allows that to go on, is engaging in a clear act of treason. A bill of attainder. Bill of attainder, we find that in Article 1, Section 10. All right? No bills of attainder, ex post facto laws. All right? This is why I am domiciled in the 10th Amendment, baby. All right? The 10th Amendment is our ultimate protection. Article 1, Section 9, Article 1, Section 10, 10th Amendment, is defined to be a legislative act which inflicts punishment without judicial trial, where the legislative body exercises the office of judge and assumes judicial magistracy and pronounces on the guilt of a party without any of the forms or safeguards of a trial. This is trial by way of jury, not jury trial, okay? These are the little Jesuitical tricks these little fuckers pull off on people that have the wool pulled over their eyes. And remember, the wolf always wears the sheep's wool clothing, right? So there's a difference between jury trial and trial by way of jury. Little Jesuitical tricks they pull. And fixes the punishment. Jurisdiction of courts may be challenged at any stage. What does that mean necessarily? It can be challenged at the beginning. It can be challenged before it ever even comes into existence. You can, ladies and gentlemen, you can challenge the jurisdictions of the court today, even though you have no business before the court. You could simply write them an inquiry to tell them to show you where they have jurisdiction. All right. During the process, during trial, during the sentencing, after sentencing, you can always challenge jurisdiction. There is no statutes of limitations on jurisdiction, period. Okay? And also may challenge after conviction and execution of judgment by way of a writ of habeas corpus. Habeas corpus shall never be suspended. All right? And even in the Constitution, it gave no grounds for the political parties to suspend habeas corpus even in time of war. All right? Now, they claim they have it, but they don't. So again, what do you want to do? You want to challenge the jurisdiction. You say you have something? Let's see it. Produce it in writing. Put your money where your mouth is. Put your nuts on the chopping block. You say this is suspended because we're in time of war? Since I've been born, we've been in war. We've been in a war against drugs. We've been in war against fucking stupidity. We've been in war against intelligent people who exercise cognitive thought process. We're at war with food. We're at war with everything. We're always at fucking war. All right? So, what I want them to do is prove to me, jurisdictionally speaking, where in the Constitution it provides them for suspending habeas corpus. It doesn't. The state citizen is immune. Notice how they say state citizen, not United States citizen, not District of Columbia citizen, okay? They say state citizen is immune from any and all government attacks and procedures, absent what? A contract. Why is that so important, ladies and gentlemen? Because in order to be in bed with Washington, D.C., Title 28, 3002-15A, ladies and gentlemen, you had to enter into some form of contract. Now, your way out of that contract is quite simple. They failed to disclose. They failed to inform you of the nature and the cause of said contracts, okay? What you were giving up. You see, in order to give up your rights, you can't sell them, you can't buy them, you can't trade them, but you can contract them away. You can put them in the vault, if you will, and enter into a contract knowingly, willingly, and intentionally, though. It must be done, all right? And because failure to disclose is a prerequisite, if you may, to cancel the contract. They failed to disclose, so therefore you couldn't knowingly, willingly, and intentionally enter into that contract in the first place because they didn't provide everything that was needed to provide. So your marriage license, for example, yeah, it's void in abnatio. It's void. It's toast, all right? If you have the mindset to understand what is going on and later on you discover that, maybe religiously speaking, to be involved in polygamy is against your beliefs. And later on you discover that the state somehow has been canoodling you in the bedroom. All right. Not only are they fist fucking you on this thing called income tax and all this other bullshit, but they're also screwing you in the sheets with no lubrication. But now, thanks to good old Derek and many of his friends that provide great quality information, you now are cognizant that they have been fucking you, all while not paying the bills, eating from your table and not contributing, not washing the dishes, not mowing the yard, not trimming the hedges. These people are absolute fucking parasites, all right? But now you've been duly informed of it. So what can you do? Well, we can simply send them an inquiry. When did you fully disclose by me entering into this contract called a marriage license that I was going to be subjected to all this rhetoric and bullshit? Please provide the details and when you did it and who served them upon me prior to entering into this contract. They can't do it. Guess what? That makes that marriage license a void or voidable contract. All right. Or, as the Supreme Court has stated clearly, every man is independent of all laws except those prescribed by nature. What do they mean by that? Prescribed by nature. That means whatever goes up must come down. It means if you jump off a 10-story fucking building, guess what? The fall isn't what's going to hurt you. It might put you into shock. You might go into a hello darkness, my old friend moment, but it's the sudden stop that's going to hurt you. And that's nature. Okay. That's nature. It's not the fall that hurts. You can fly 200 mile an hour through the air. It doesn't hurt you. It's that sudden stop at the end that hurts you. And that's the call of nature, my friends. He is not bound by any institutions formed by his fellow man. All right. What's that mean? That means politically, them motherfucking scoundrels ain't got any more rights than you do. Okay. And then there's this nifty little part at the end that says without his consent. Well, in order to consent to something, you have to knowingly, willingly, and intelligently commit to it, to consent, which means what? Our good old friend full disclosure must be had. Fraud by government. There should be a whole fucking page of this shit, because it's all fraud. Even with the new deal that they're making with the World Health Organization. Understand this. It's all bullshit. It's all complete and utter bullshit. Completely prevented. They're completely prevented from doing anything of that nature because the Constitution says so. Article 1, Section 10, once again. Isn't that just fucking wonderful? Isn't that just grand to know that everything they're doing is well outside the scope of their authority, if they had any at all? And it doesn't much matter to you and I. It only bothers U.S. citizens. And U.S. citizens are under the direct edicts of these people. But free American people who understand that they were born on a state, not in a state, because, again, the only state you can be in is a state of mind, okay? Unless you're dead, then we might consider you being in a state. And then again, it would be a state of maybe unconsciousness. Who knows? Who's been to the afterlife and come back and really told us what it's like, right? We really don't know. But fraud in its elementary common law sense of deceit. And this is one of the meanings that fraud bears in the statutes includes the deliberate concealment. Well, do you think they deliberately concealed from you by signing a contract with the DMV you'd be subject to Washington, D.C., their private for-profit corporation and their revenue policies? Did anybody disclose that to you? Oh, damn. Do you feel like you got the shaft? Well, I'll tell you what you do. You just turn around, write these sons of bitches a nice little I love you letter telling them, Dear John, it's fucking over. You lording over me, those days are gone. All right, I will put up with no tyrannical bullshit from your fucking leftist points of view. The Democratic and Republican Party are all the motherfucking same, and you can lick my nuts. Okay, back to it. Of material information in a public official is a fiduciary towards the public. I'll be a son of a bitch, including in the case of a judge. The litigants who appear before him. Oh, notice how it says litigants? Okay. Real party and interest? Where's that lawyer's contract? Where's his power of attorney from his fucking client? Where's the contract? Who gave him the delegation of authority to operate outside of Washington, D.C. on my soil? Right? These are just some common questions that seem to plague my mind when I see dipshit prosecuting attorneys walk in on behalf of their imaginary motherfucking client. And why do I have that premonition? Why do I feel that way? Well, let me tell you something. I once tried to bring a case against a prosecutor on behalf of Santa Claus, and they all fucking laughed at me and said, you need to leave the court. You can't be serious about this, Derek. I said, I'm dead fucking serious. Santa Claus said he's been a very naughty boy. And they said, you know what, Derek? You can't bring this case. This is fraudulent. Where's the Santa Claus you speak of? I said, yeah, where's the fucking state you fuck speak of? All right? And if he deliberately conceals material information from them, he is guilty of fraud. Burden of proof. The law creates a presumption where the burden is on a party to prove a material fact peculiarly within his knowledge, and he fails without excuse to testify that his testimony, if introduced, would be adverse to his interest. Notification of legal responsibility is the first essential of due process of law. That is notice and opportunity, ladies and gentlemen. See a thing, report a thing, all right? Silence can only be equated with fraud where there is a legal or moral duty to speak, or when an inquiry left unanswered would be intentionally misleading. Mr. Prosecuting Attorney, could you go ahead and show me the contract between you and your client? Could you produce their social security card, their birth certificate, the place where they were born, the high school they attended, and where they're currently employed at? Would you mind just doing that for me? That might just help us resolve this issue of you bringing fraud upon the court, being the fact that I've actually asked you to produce these things, and silence can only be equated with fraud where there is a legal or moral duty to speak, or when an inquiry left unanswered would be intentionally misleading. Would you mind just going ahead and producing that for me? Thank you. Clearfield doctrine. Oh shit, this is one of my fun ones. You go to a clerk of the court and they say, oh, you got a claim, do you? I sure do. Well, that'll be great. We'd be more than happy to do business with you. You just need to go ahead and give us $485 to file your claim. Oh, so this isn't a legitimate government then, because according to all constitutions throughout all 50 states, including the Constitution for the United States of America, justice shall be administered freely, without delay, and without payment. So if you're accepting currency, does that mean that you're automatically going to find in my favor? Well, no, Derek, you've got it misunderstood. That's not how this happens. Oh, really? So how are you asserting a fee for the interest of justice at this point? What services have you provided me with today that are due and owing? Well, we haven't done anything for you yet. So you really don't have a right to bill me at this point. Well, here's the thing, Derek. If you don't give us the $458, we're not going to file your claim. So you're going to breach your oath of office, are you? Okay. That means you're taking, because correct me if I'm sadly mistaken, but you took an oath. All right. And you're also taking a paycheck to support and enforce and protect the Constitution, right? To make sure that it is followed, correct? So what happens when they're asking you for $458? The Clearfield doctrine kicks in. They're no longer government. Government descends to the level of a mere private corporation. Surprise, fucking shocking. and take on the characteristics of a private corporate commercial paper, Federal Reserve notes, and security checks is concerned. What are they asking for you when you make payment? Have you ever asked them what specie would you like? What would you like? Just give them a really nice, sweet, serenading voice. Could you just go ahead and sensually explain as to what kind of currency, what specie you would like? And they'll get all flustered. Well, you could give us a check, a credit card, a money order. Yes. All that sounds grand and all, but really that's not a noun. I really need you to describe it with a noun. Tell me what you want. What exactly are you looking for? Because the second they say Federal Reserve notes, I got another question. What is your interest in me using somebody's privately owned, privately trademarked, intellectual property for your services? And furthermore, where would I acquire such a thing? How would I get it? And do you have the permission to use it? For purposes of suits, such corporations and individuals are regarded as entities entirely separate from government. So the clerk of the court is working for a corporation that has a DUNS number and has a SAMS identifier for profit. They're not government at all, ladies and gentlemen. And when they're asking you for some type of wherewithal for services they haven't even provided, and furthermore will exclaim to you that we can't guarantee that you'll get what you want. Well, wait a minute. When I go to Walmart or when I go to Burger King and I order a cheeseburger, they give me exactly what the fuck. The very notion that I would have to pay for justice is disgusting. All right. The very fact that what should be done shall be done comes at a price of sweat equity is the most narcissistic fucking thing I have ever seen in my life. And the saddest part of it all is 90% of the people that bring claim against government officials never get serviced, never get satisfied. The case is thrown out miraculously on behalf of the government agency that is really a private for-profit corporation. Yes, folks, I just tell it how the fuck it is. I ain't here to sugarcoat nothing. I ain't here to be your fucking friend. I'm just here to fucking show you reality. When governments enter the world of commerce, they are subject to the same burdens as any private firm or corporation. All right? Trezevant case. A lot of people quote it. I think it's really funny because my rights don't depreciate in value. They appreciate in value. And what do I mean by that exactly? Well, the more intellectual knowledge that I gain, the more and more I realize the value of my rights. So although Trezevant may have got $1,024 a minute, Federal Reserve notes we are speaking, I look at the current depreciation of the dollar, and I know damn good and well that I don't want $1,024 a minute for my rights, because if I accepted $1,024 a minute for my rights compared to 1984, I would have lost like 80% of the value, all right, of my rights. So if we're going to take our rights and base it upon a fiat that naturally from its inception and creation depreciates, that's what fiat is designed to do, to depreciate in value. Okay, it will have its greatest value from the first day it's instituted amongst men, and from that point on, it will depreciate. And what tells us that? Well, over 10,000 years of human history watching Rome degrade their form of currency to the point where eventually, through inflation, using bronze and brass and everything else that they used for a form of money and walking away from something that was had intrinsic value. Not that copper and these things don't, but I'll tell you this much. The Federal Reserve note has no intrinsic value. And to prove my point, when you send a Federal Reserve note off to be shredded, they shred it. But if you were to send them a silver coin, they'd smelt that puppy down and they would save that silver. So that tells you what real money is versus paper fiat, blue ink and green ink with a little strip through it is worth to them. All right. They will shred that, burn it, do away with it, turn it into paper mache. They don't have a use for it anymore. But if you were to send a Morgan silver dollar back to them, the old banker'd smile and wink. Thank you very much, son, for turning that back in. We smelt that baby down and make a new coin out of it. Why? Because it still has a fuck ton of value. Why? Because it has intrinsic value. All right. So let's talk about Trezevant case. Damages awarded. Evidence that motorists cited for traffic violation was incarcerated for 23 minutes during booking process, even though he had never been arrested and at all times had sufficient cash on hand to post bonding pending court disposition of citation. Now, there's a problem with this right here because I've been teaching you guys about false arrest and false imprisonment. And when these shysters on the side of the road, these gun-toting morons, by design, take you to the jail and start the booking process, they clearly show that their intent was never to take you to the magistrate. First, they wanted to get paid. How do they get paid? They get paid by selling your private intellectual information to Interpol, which then sells it to 148 different nations. Isn't that fucking amazing? And the whole time you're getting fist fucked, you don't see a fucking dime of it. So, now that we know what they're doing with your private intellectual property, that you're being forced under threat, duress, and coercion via its arms, while denying you your right to be taken directly to the magistrate, you now have a claim, okay? Was sufficient to support findings that municipality employing officers, what? Municipality? I thought these were all agents of the government. Municipality? Where in the Constitution does it talk about municipalities? It don't. All right? I'm just pulling the veil back from your eyes so you can see. Take a look at the lady's leg and see no more, all right? Municipalities employing officers who cited motorists and county board of criminal justice. Now, what are these guys doing? They're actually enforcing revenue codes. Why? Because they're enforcing the Department of Motor Vehicle Code, all right? For the benefit of the Treasury by extorting you under the guise that you're engaged in commerce without having any reasonable articulable fact to support that notion, okay? So they unlawfully and illegally stop you. That custodial arrest actually is a false arrest on the premise that you have been prevented from going where you want, when you want, and now you're at a location you do not wish to be, which operated facility in which motorist was incarcerated had unconstitutionally, I wonder if the Constitution bears no burden, why do they talk about things being unconstitutional all the time? I've been in a lot of courts. I said, Dirk, you mentioned the Constitution again? We'll throw you in jail. Oh, really? That's funny because everything that I read talks about unconstitutional, constitutional, and unconstitutionality. So funny how in these lower venues they say, you're not allowed to bring up the Constitution. Oh, I dare say you can go fuck yourself right proper there. Unconstitutionally deprived motorist of his right. A right. Son of a bitch. Like I said, you can't buy them, you can't sell them, you can't barter them away. The only thing you can do is contract them away. But in order to contract them away, you would have to have full disclosure. Nobody fully disclosed to Mr. Trezevant anything. And so any contract that he might have entered into was not knowingly, willingly, and intentional. And because of that, it violated his right to liberty. All right. Jury verdict of $25,000 in favor of the motorist. Now remember, $25,000 in 1984-85 is nothing. $25,000 today, you're lucky to buy a roll of fucking Charmin for that shit. Mark my words, the $100 bill will soon say, if that currency even exists in the near future, will say something like $1 billion. $1 billion for a fucking loaf of bread real soon. That's called inflation, all right? That's what it is. Jury verdict of $25,000 in favor of the motorist who was unconstitutionally deprived of his liberty, which means he wasn't directly taken to the magistrate where the magistrate would have smacked the donut-eating fucker on the side of the head and said, let this man go. What is wrong with you, fucking Barney Five, right? Incarcerated during booking process following citation. Well, see, because he didn't take him directly to the magistrate, they're showing that their intent was to book them. What happened to being innocent until proven guilty, right? Having your day before the judge, the magistrate. In order to get a warrant for probable cause, the man making the claim has to come before the judge and explain what happened before the judge can issue a warrant for probable cause. Well, sadly, this knowledge has been lost throughout the years, and many people don't realize that that's what it actually takes to be able to arrest somebody. Citation for traffic violation was not excessive in view of evidence of motorist back pain during period of incarceration and jailer's refusal to provide medical treatment. Now, it is against the law to die in the sheriff's custody. How many of you knew that shit? Isn't that fucking funny? Like I had a choice. Sorry, you're dead now. We're going to go ahead and charge your carcass for violating the law. You weren't allowed to die in the sheriff's custody. All that really means is if somebody's going to die, and I have seen this more than once now, where people had to have a leg amputated or something, and the sheriff immediately kicks him out of the jail. Immediately. Why? One, they bear all the liability of having to deal with the surgery and everything else and the inherent cost of that surgery. And two, if they die in their custody, they get heavily, heavily fined for it. It is illegal to die in the sheriff's custody, all right? So if you get diagnosed with something terminal while you're in prison, there's a high probability if you make that issue, they will kick you the fuck out of there. As well as fact that motorist was clearly entitled to compensation for incarceration. Why? Because false imprisonment occurred, all right? False arrest itself and mental anguish. Oh, he got punitive damages that he had suffered from entire episode. Yeah, mentally probably scarred him for the rest of his life. He got 25 grand out of it, and I think if my calculations and my memory serves me right, my recollection, 25,000 back in those days would have bought you like 79.42 ounces of gold. So if his 23 minutes in prison, all right, 23 minutes right here, was worth 79.23 ounces of gold back then, I want the same 79.23 ounces of gold for 23 minutes. What's the going gold rate right now? It's like $2,000 an ounce. I want the same motherfucking deal, all right? Now, Mr. Anonymous tells me, Derek, you should just go by the consumer price index. That shows the deflation of the dollar that maybe the American people would understand even further. Well, you could go that route as well, but I like precious metals, all right? Entitled to the compensation for incarceration itself and mental anguish that he had suffered from entire episode. We are bound to interpret the Constitution in the light of the law as it existed at the time it was adopted. Ladies and gentlemen, the Constitution was written in plain English. It is not open for fucking interpretation. It says what the fuck it says. The Constitution is a written instrument. As such, its meaning does not alter. That which it meant when it was adopted, it means now. Even 200 years down the road, it still will mean the same thing. All right, ladies and gentlemen? The right to travel, further, the right to travel in Shapiro versus Thompson here, the right to travel by private conveyance, all right, that's your private household consumer good, for private purposes upon the common way cannot be infringed. Okay, why? Because it's a motherfucking natural right, all right? No license or permission is required for travel when such travel is not for the purpose of commercial, for-profit, or gains on the open highways operating under a license in commerce, all right? Now, I find it really funny because in Nebraska, you could literally fly an airplane and not have to have a license so long as it's under like 1,200 pounds. You could literally take to the skies with no formal fucking training, and I know plenty of farmers that do it to check their cattle with no license, but yet somehow going down the road, they enforce the shit out of this thing that you gotta have a license. You gotta have a license. Are you kidding me? I can literally jump in a plane right now and go flying around with zero fucking experience, although I do have minimal experience. But I'm just saying a common man in Nebraska can jump in a fucking airplane and take off and take to flight, and there's nothing nobody's gonna say to him about it. All right? So long as it's under 1,200 fucking pounds. Okay. And I just think it's fucking hilarious that they enforce this license bullshit when my daughter, who's under the age of 16, can ride around freely on her four-wheeler in town and nobody says a fucking thing. Partially because, well, they'd have to deal with her papa, and I'm not a real nice fucking guy to deal with, especially when you try to infringe upon my daughter's right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I become a very angry motherfucking codger, and I'm not very nice. Leave my daughter alone, keep her name out your mouth, and you will live a family the fuck alone. The Constitution of these United States is the supreme law of the land. What is the law of the land predicated off of? God's law and nature's God. Any law that is repugnant to the Constitution is null and void. All right? It's not just voidable. It's not just voidable. It is null and void. No state shall convert a liberty into a privilege, issue a license for it, and attach a fee, all right? That's Article 1, Section 10. Yet again, I would encourage everybody to become domiciled in the 10th Amendment, all right? If the state converts a liberty into a privilege, the citizen can engage in the right with impunity. Yes, sir, Bob. Where rights secure no rulemaking or legislation which would abrogate them. Unless you're a United States citizen, then I say, welcome to the machine, you sorry sap. You have subjected yourself to a body politic, a bunch of evil, sinister fuckers that don't follow their own rules they create for everybody else. And unfortunately for you, you're subject to those bullshit edicts. An unconstitutional act is not law. It coffers no rights. It imposes no duties, affords no protection. It creates no office. It is, in legal contemplation, as inoperative as though it had never been passed. The claim and exercise of a constitution cannot be converted into a crime. Waivers of constitution may be voluntary. They must be knowingly intelligent acts done with sufficient awareness. What does that mean? That means they must disclose everything to you. Okay. Or voidable. No state legislator or executive judicial officer can war against the Constitution without violating his undertaking to support it. Who do we get a hold of when we have all kinds of officers violating their rights? Well, the DOJ is compromised. The FBI is compromised and doesn't have a charter to even exist. The CIA obviously doesn't work for the American people. So where are you going to go with this information? You're going to go to the DOD, the Department of Defense. You're going to go to your provost marshal, and you're also going to be communicating with the Secret Service. They are the ones who will go scoop up these nefarious fucking actors and throw their asses in prison for treason. The constitutional theory is that we the people are the sovereigns, the state and federal officials only our agents, all right? They are servants among us, and we didn't force them to be servants. Remember, they volunteered, and we pay them quite handsomely for that service. So let's put them back in their little box and make sure they're doing the right thing on behalf of the American people. Dissent by Douglas. If the nation comes down from its position of sovereignty and enters the domain of commerce, it submits itself to the same laws that govern individuals therein. It assumes the position of ordinary citizens, and it cannot recede from the fulfillment of its obligations. That's just like the Clearfield Doctrine there, doesn't it? Acts of Congress making the notes paper of the United States legal tender do not apply to exact taxation made under state law, all right? No immunity. Sovereign immunity does not apply where, as here, government is a lawbreaker or jurisdiction is the issue. That means, ladies and gentlemen, there is no 11th Amendment immunity. Knowing failure to disclose material information necessary to prevent statements from being misleading or making representation despite knowledge that it has no reasonable basis in fact are actionable as fraud under law. Party in interest may become liable for fraud by mere silent acquiescence and partaking of benefits of fraud. Out of fraud, no action arises. Fraud never gives a right of action. No court will lend its aid to a man who founds his cause of action upon an immoral or illegal act. Fraud destroys into which it enters. Fraud vitiates everything. Fraud vitiates the most solemn contracts, documents, and even judgments. When a citizen challenges the acts of a federal or state official as being illegal, that cannot just simply avoid liability based upon the fact that he is a public official. The Arlington Lee's estate, via a tax sale some years earlier, held to be void by the court. In so voiding the title of the United States, the court declared, "No man in this country is so high that he is above the law. No officer of the law with impunity impunity. All the officers of the government, from the highest to the lowest, are creatures of the law and are bound to obey it. It is the only supreme power in our system of government, and every man who by accepting office participates in its function is strongly bound to submit to that supremacy and to observe the limitations which it imposes upon the exercise of the authority which it gives. Shall it be said that the courts cannot give remedy when the citizen has been deprived of his property by force, his estate seized and converted to the use government without any lawful authority, without any process of law, and without any compensation because the president has ordered it and his officers are in possession? If such be the law of this country, it sanctions a tyranny which has no existence in monarchies of Europe, nor in any other government which has a just claim to well-regulated liberty and the protections of personal rights. We have no office in this government, from the president down to the most subordinate agent, who does not hold office under the law, with prescribed duties and limited authority. In these cases, he is not sued as or because he is the officer of the government, but as an individual, and the court is not ousted of jurisdiction because he asserts authority as such officer. To make out his defense, he must show that his authority was sufficient in law to protect him. It is no answer for the defendant to say, I am an officer of the government and acted under its authority, unless he shows the sufficiency of that authority. Whereas officials and even judges have no immunity, officials and judges are deemed to know the law and shown to uphold the law. Officials and judges cannot claim to act in good faith in willful deprivation of the law. They certainly cannot plead ignorance of the law, because you and I, ladies and gentlemen, cannot proclaim ignorance of the law. It's a quid pro motherfucking quo. The courts have ruled there is no such thing as ignorance of the law. It is ludicrous for the learned officials and judges to plead ignorance of the law. Therefore, there is no judicial or otherwise in matters of rights secured by the Constitution for the United States of America. When lawsuits are brought against federal officials, they must be brought against them in their individual capacity, not their official capacity. Remember, I always tell you, it's not a sheriff that hurt you. It's not a state trooper. It is a man who at times acts in an official capacity that caused I a harm. Capacity, not their official capacity. When federal officials perpetrate constitutional torts, they do so ultra vires, beyond the powers, and lose the shield of immunity. Personal involvement in deprivation of constitutional rights is a prerequisite to award of damages, but defendant may be personally involved in constitutional deprivation by direct participation, failure to remedy wrongs after learning about it, which means you had to put them on notice. You're violating my rights, dickhead. Knock, knock, ding, ding. Once you ring that bell, you can't unring it, motherfucker. You owe me. And unfortunately, by violating my rights, most of the time, the only remedy that can be had is some type of financial wherewithal. Creation of a policy or custom under which unconstitutional practices occur. Gross negligence is managing nations. The law requires proof of jurisdiction to appear on the record of the administrative agency and all administrative proceedings. If you've relied on prior decisions, you have a perfect defense for willfulness. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. If you slap these lower courts with a Supreme Court cases, you have a perfect defense for willfulness. Why? Because the Supreme Court rules in favor of the law of the land, which means all courts are bound by Supreme Court rulings. All right? State citizens. State citizenship. The term resident and citizen of the United States is distinguished from a citizen of one of the several states. Ladies and gentlemen, I beg you to rethink about calling yourself a United States citizen and claiming that you're patriotic. Because by all accounts, you would actually be a treasonous, traitorous rat bastard, all right? Because the several states, the Union of States, being a state national, if you will, is supreme compared to the District of Columbia's United States citizens, all right? In that the former is a special class. Oh, I love the word special. Special deposit, special trust. I love the word special. Anytime I see special, I always pay acute attention to details because they're telling you something very special. Class of citizen created by Congress, all right? We have in our political system a government of the United States and government of each of the several states. Several states is not the Union of States. Please do not confuse the two. Each one of these governments is distinct from the other, and each has citizens of its own. Imagine that. They have citizens of their own. So who does the District of Columbia lord over? Oh, that's right. United States citizens. And if you claim to be a United States citizen, guess what? You're now under the WHO's authority. All right, the World Health Organization for the next bat guano fucking scheme illness that plagues the countryside. That's right. You United States citizens will be the ones that are rounded up and put in concentration camps. Oh, I forgot that's not politically correct anymore. We have to use the word FEMA camp because it just sounds so much fucking nicer. All right. He was not a citizen of the United States. I'll be damned. They lost jurisdiction. He was a citizen and voter of the state. One may be a citizen of a state and yet not a citizen of the United States. Thank the fucking Lord that there is a citizenship of the United States and citizenship of a state. A citizen of the United States is a citizen of the federal government. Again, if you proclaim to be a United States citizen, enjoy your fucking FEMA camp, all right? I'm sure they're going to treat you really fucking well, all right? Before we place the stigma of criminal convictions upon any such citizen, the legislative mandate must be clear and unambiguous. Well, I hate to tell you this. Every last one of their statutes, codes, city ordinances, rules, and regulations is very vague and ambiguous. Let's just start out with the word you. I once had a prominent military man tell me, Derek, you know, you sound like equivalent snot. I go, what do you mean? He says, you always run around saying you. You. Those are fighting words. It's accusatory. Stop using the word you. You makes you sound like a snot, you know, like you're begging for somebody to punch you in your fucking nose. And I was like, wow, I never realized that. He says, yeah, that's because you're a product of your environment. The word you is... It's also a pronoun and doesn't describe a damn thing, Derek. And I was like, well, thank you for that information. I really appreciate that. Justice Marshall has called the tenderness of the law for the rights of individuals, entitles each person, regardless of economic or social status, to an unequivocal warning from the legislator as to whether he is within the class of persons subject to vicarious liability. Congress cannot be deemed to have intended to punish anyone who is not plainly and unmistakably within the confines of the statute. Where does it say in the statute that you must succumb to the creation that we created for our? It only gets that jurisdiction when you violate another man's rights, ladies and gentlemen. We do not overlook those constitutional limitations which, for the protection of rarely attend all investigations conducted under the authority of Congress. Neither branch of the legislative department, still less any merely administrative body established by Congress, possesses or can be invested with a general power of making inquiry into the private affairs of the state citizen or state national, all right? Okay, that's private, and it's protected under Article 1, Section 10, or the 10th Amendment, I mean. And it cannot be too often repeated that the principle that embodied the essence of constitutional liberty and security forbid all invasions on the part of the government and its employees of the sanctity of man's home and the privacy of his life. That's right. Your medical decisions are yours. They're your business and your business as as said by Mr. Justice Field in regards to Pacific Railroad Commission, of all the rights of the citizens, few are of greater importance or more essential to his peace and happiness than the right of personal security. That's right. Carry your tactical defense tools any way you see fit. Apologize not and tell them to stick their permits right up their ass. And that involves not merely protection of his person from assault, but exemption of his private affairs, books, and papers from the inspection and scrutiny of others. Without the enjoyment of this right, all others would lose half their value. It is scarcely necessary to say that the power given to Congress to regulate interstate commerce does not carry with it any power to destroy or impair those guarantees. This court has already spoken fully on that general subject in Conselman versus Hitchcock. Suffice it is the present case to say that as the Interstate Commerce Commission, by petition in a circuit court of the United States, seeks, upon grounds distinctly set forth, an order to compel appellees to answer particular questions and to produce certain books, papers, etc. in their possession, it was open to each of them to contend before that court that he was protected by the Constitution from taking answers. That's right. You have to invoke the Constitution and the Article 1, Section 8 courts, ladies and gentlemen. Don't let these cross-wearing fucking judges tell you otherwise. You must assert your rights. I invoke the Sixth Amendment. I'll see my fucking accuser right now. Oh yeah, the Constitution says, Derek, that you only have right to witnesses. Ah yeah, who do you think's the primary fucking witness? The man aggrieved. Now you bring that motherfucker's ass forward, because he's calling me a liar, a thief, and a scoundrel, and that, sir, is one thing I am fucking not. So you bring his ass forward, or that lying, looting, pandering piece of shit to the right of me, known as the prosecuting attorney, is a fucking fox in the henhouse, and I want his ass thrown in fucking jail. To the questions propounded to him, or that he was not legally bound to produce the books, papers, etc., order to be produced, or that neither the question propounded nor the books, papers, etc. called for relate to the particular matter under investigation, nor to any matter which the commission is entitled under the Constitution or laws to investigate, these issues being determined in their favor by the court. Of the commission could have been dismissed upon its merits. When a judge knows that he lacks jurisdiction or acts in the face of clearly valid statutes, expressly deprives him of jurisdiction, judicial immunity is send their lying, looting, pandering asses to Guantanamo motherfucking Bay. All right. We put $200 million in that facility, and I really want to see it used for the greater good of mankind. All right. Jurisdiction. It is a fact of law that the person asserting jurisdiction must. Oh, who's the person asserting jurisdiction when the prosecuting attorney is prosecuting you on behalf of his imaginary motherfucking friend? Well, he carries the liability, all right? And because he can't produce his imaginary friend, guess what? Some bitch just brought fraud on a court. He's questioning your intelligence. He's trying to make a fool of you. He's making a mockery of the law, all right? When challenged, prove that jurisdiction exists. Well, how do we challenge it? How are we going to prove it? Well, I'm invoking the Sixth Amendment, and I want to see the motherfucker that's saying that I'm a liar, a cheater, a stealer, or have caused them fucking harm. Because if I have, I'm a very good man, and I will repent for my sins, and I will offer compensation. However, if the real party in interest can't swear out an affidavit, I can't depose that motherfucker, then I suggest you have that bailiff over there arrest this son of a bitch next to me right fucking now, or you become an accessory, all right, to the crime of extortion. All right, which is a violation of Title 18 that applies to these agents. Mere good faith assertion of power and authority, jurisdiction, have been abolished. Let's see here. The United States District Court is not a true United States court established under Article 3 of the Constitution to administer the judicial powers of the United States therein conveyed. It is created by virtue of the sovereign congressional faculty granted under Article 4(3) of that instrument of making all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory, not the state, the federal fucking enclaves, all right? Belonging to the United States. Belonging to the United States. You and I, ladies and gentlemen, don't belong to the fucking United States, although you can voluntarily participate if you like. But I think it's a very sad day in American history when people do. The resemblance of its jurisdiction to that of true United States courts in offering an opportunity to non-residents, you might want to draw your attention to a non-resident. I am a non-citizen, non-resident of the United States. I'm very proud to fucking say that. I'm a preferred stockholder in that corporation, but I am definitely not a resident, definitely not a citizen of the United States. Of resorting to a tribunal not subject to local influence does not change its character as a mere territorial court. Territorial court, Article 1, Section 8, military tribunal. That's what it is. Party cannot be bound by contract that he has not made or authorized. Free consent is an indispensable element in making valid contracts. We find that in Hale versus Hinkle. The individual may stand upon his constitutional rights as a citizen. He is entitled to carry on his private business in his own way. His power to contract is unlimited. Yes, indeed. It's fucking unlimited, ladies and gentlemen. You can do it all fucking day long. He owes no duty to the state or his neighbors to divulge his business. That's right. You have a right to fucking privacy or to open his doors to an investigation so far as it may tend to incriminate him. He owes no duty to the state since he receives there nothing from the state beyond the protection of his life and property, which is exactly why government was fucking created in the first place. His rights are as such as existed by the law of the land, common law, long antecedent, existed way before any fucking theory of state governments, the United States Constitution. Why? Because it's the law of God and nature's God. These things existed way before man even had a free thought, all right? To the organization of the state and can only be taken from him by what? Due fucking process of law. All right, there must be an aggrieved party due to your actions causing them harm, damage, or loss in order to constitute taking of any of your fucking or compelling you to do anything. And in accordance, that's right, you owe them not a motherfucking thing to the public so long as he does not trespass, common law, upon their rights. Can I get a fucking amen? All right, let's move on. This has been a most wonderful educational teaching here. Is binding on all. Hale versus Hinkle is binding on all the courts of the United States of America until another Supreme Court case says it isn't. No other Supreme Court case has ever overturned Hale versus Hinkle. You think you would be taught that in fucking high school, elementary school, high school, college. But nowhere do you learn about Hale versus Hinkle in the public fool system because they don't want you to know. They don't want you to be intelligent. None of the various issues of Hale versus Hinkle has ever been overturned. Let me quote that again. None of the various... I think that's sufficient evidence right there to go ahead and print out Hale versus Hinkle and go read what all the various issues were in Hale versus Hinkle, because none of the various issues have ever been overruled in any court of the United States, okay? Since 1906, Hale versus Hinkle has been cited by the federal and state appellate court system over 1,600 times. In nearly every instance when a case is cited, it has an impact on precedent. Remember, because they don't create case law, it's precedent authority of the cited case. Compared with other previously decided Supreme Court cases, no other case has surpassed Hale versus Hinkle. You might want to go print Hale versus Hinkle off so you can read it. In the number of times it has been cited by the courts. under federal law, which is applicable to all state laws. Oh, would you look at that? How many times have you been in a state court and you bring in a federal law and they say, we don't give a shit about that. We're the state. I'm telling you right now, is applicable in all states. All right. The U.S. Why? Why? You ask yourself why. People always want to argue, the federal doesn't have any jurisdiction, blah, 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 blah. Listen up, fuckers. The United States Supreme Court supports the fucking law of the land. Why would you use any other fucking court cases? All right? The U.S. Supreme Court stated that if a court is without authority, its judgment and orders are regarded as nullities. They are not viable, but simply voidable, but simply void, and form no bar to recovery sought even prior to a reversal in opposition to them. They constitute no justification, and all persons concerned in executing such judgments or sentences are considered in law a trespass. All right? And a trespass remains a trespass until what? Say it with me, ladies and gentlemen. Until remedy is had. Amen. No statutes of limitations on a trespass, ladies and gentlemen. When you are trespassed by a wrongdoer, that trespass remains a trespass until you are made whole, financial or otherwise. All right? Federal law and Supreme Court cases apply to state court cases. The practice of law is an occupation of common right. Remember, you can't convert a right into a privilege, issue a license and a fee, and they can't engage in it. Tell them about fuck off, I know my rights. Kiss my ass. The term District Court of the United States, as used in the rules without an addition expressing a wider connotation, has its historic significance. It describes the constitutional courts created under Article 3 of the Constitution. Courts of the territories, all right? That's the federal enclaves, ladies and gentlemen, are legislative courts. All right, they apply to volunteers and employees. All right, if you're a volunteer subject of the United States, quit your fucking bitching. I don't want to fucking hear it. If you're a voter who got bumbling Joe Biden into office in that corporate setting, stop fucking crying. I don't want to fucking hear it. If you're a Republican or a Democrat, I don't want to fucking hear it. You want to know? Volunteered to be subject to that shit because you don't know who the fuck you are or why the Constitution was put in place, all right? So stop your bitching and your sniveling, blow your nose, get the sand out of your vagina, and start fucking reading. Properly speaking, and are not district courts of the United States, we have often held that vesting a territorial court with jurisdiction similar to that vested in the District Court of the United States does not make it a District Court of the United States. Not only did the promulgating order Court of the United in its historic and proper sense, but the omission of provisions for the application of the rules, the territorial courts and other courts mentioned in the authorizing act clearly shows the limitation that was intended. All right. The rights of sovereignty extended to all persons and things not privileged that are within the territory. They extend to all strangers, residents, including fucking aliens. I'm one of them aliens. Oh yeah, and I don't mind being an alien. Not only to those who are naturalized. Naturalization didn't happen till way later on, way past the Act of 1871, the Reorganization Act. So naturalization is not typically found in Naturalization wasn't even mentioned until way after the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, and the Federalist Papers had already been well established, ladies and gentlemen. And to those who are domiciled therein, that's one of them nasty fucking words, domicile, resident, inhabitant, all those words are no-nos. We don't want to play with those words because those words have very bad, sinister connotations and consequences. Therein, having taken up their abode with the intentions of permanent residence. Well, I'm just a sojourner here because my permanent residence is with the kingdom of God. I am just here to be about my Father's business and his good works, all right? But also to those whose residence is territory, or a transitory, All strangers, protection of the sovereign while they are within his territory and owe a temporary allegiance in return for that protection. Well, let me just tell you something about this here little saying here. I don't owe an allegiance to the fucking state. We fucking created this state. They owe us a duty and an allegiance. They are in breach of trust, and they should be hung rightfully by their labia and their testicles if they are found to be in breach of trust until they understand what the fuck they're actually doing. These constitutional provisions employ the word person. That is, anyone who we have permitted to peacefully reside within our borders may resort to the courts for redress of an injury done him in his lands, goods, persons, or reputation. The real party plaintiff, real party and fucking interest. Imagine that. I can't bring a claim on behalf of Peter Pan, some bitch, for whom the nominal plaintiff sue is not sworn to have entered our land in an unlawful manner. We said to her, you may enter and reside with us and be equally protected by our laws so long as you conform thereto. You may own property and our laws will protect your title. We, as a people, have said to those of foreign birth that these constitutional guarantees shall assure you of our good faith. They are with the written surety to you of our proud boast that the United States is a haven of refuge of the oppressed of all mankind. Court will assign to common law terms their common law meanings unless legislator directs otherwise. Well, let me tell you something. When a judge wants to pervert your language into some legislative fucking edict, you tell him to pack sand, all right? Kiss your ass. You know exactly what the fuck you're talking about because you have the right to abolish a government at any fucking moment, okay? And the second they step outside their authority, you spank that ass. Just like your papa did when you got caught saying a cuss word when you was younger. He pulled his belt off and tapped that ass. So you just got to tap him on the ass. I'll tell you something. When things hurt, they'll change their behavior, all right? Common law by constitution is law of state. Common law is but the accumulated expressions of various judicial tribunals in their efforts to ascertain what is right and just between individuals in respect to private disputes. The common law is in force in Michigan except so far as it is repugnant to or inconsistent with the Constitution or statutes of the state. Excuse me. The Constitution was ordained, all right, established by the people of the United States, wasn't ordained and established by governments and oligarchies and kings and queens. It was established by the people for the people, all right, for their benefit, for themselves, for their own government. That's right. Who came first, the chicken or the egg? I can't fucking tell you that, but I can tell you who came first when it comes to the government versus the people. The fucking people did, which means we are supreme and we run the fucking the roost, all right? Of the individual state. Each state established a constitution for itself, and in that constitution provided such limitations and restrictions on the powers of its particular government. As its judgment dictated, the people of the United States framed for the United States as they supposed best and best calculated to promote their interest. The power they conferred on this government were to be exercised by itself, and the limitations on power, if expressed in general terms, are naturally and we think necessarily applicable to the government created by the instrument. They are limitations of power granted in the instrument itself, not of distinct governments framed by different persons and for different purposes. If these propositions be correct, the Fifth Amendment must be understood as restraining the power of the general government, not to the states. Sovereignty itself is, of course, not subject to the law, for it is the author and source of the law. But in our system, while sovereign powers are delegated to the agencies of government, sovereignty in and of itself remains with the people, by whom and for whom all governments exist. And the law is the definition and limitations of power, for the very idea that one man may be compelled to hold his life or the means of living or any material right essential to the enjoyment of life at the mere will of another seems to be intolerable on any country where freedom prevails, as being the essence of slavery itself. Yick Woo versus Hopkins. He is not to substitute even his gesture will for theirs. Otherwise, it would not be the common will which prevails, and to that extent, the people would not govern. Speech by Judge Learned Hand at the Mayflower Hotel in Washington, D.C. The Congress cannot revoke the sovereign power of the people to override itself as thus declared. In the United States, sovereignty resides in the people, who act through the organs established by the Constitution. As men whose intentions require no concealment generally employ the words which most directly and aptly express the ideas they intend to convey. The enlightened patriot who framed our Constitution and the people who adopted it must be understood to have employed the words in their natural sense and to have intended what they had said. No legislator can bargain away the public health or the public morals. Fuck, somebody ought to call Joe Biden. Get him on the fucking phone. I'll talk to that fucking bumbling idiot for you guys. The people themselves cannot do it, much less their fucking servants. Fuck. We're just having all kinds of epiphanies today. Strictly speaking, in our republic form of government, the absolute sovereignty of the nation is in the people of the nation, and the residuary sovereignty of each state, not granted to any of its public functionaries, is in the fucking people. Could you believe that shit? Of the state. The theory of American political system is that the ultimate sovereignty is in the people. Fuck, and all these times the FBI has convinced everybody, every agent and agency, that when you talk like I talk, they're a sovereign citizen. They're dangerous to our agenda. They're domestic terrorists. Let me tell you, Congress did not have the authority to redefine domestic violence, okay? And domestic violence, per the Constitution, is considered internal insurrection. You want to grab a judge by the short and fucking curlies, you tell him that he is engaged in internal insurrection, domestic fucking terrorism, and you won't fucking have it. Boy, he will straighten right the fuck up. Excuse me, son, what'd you say? Yeah, you heard me, Pops. You better fucking clean the shit out of your ears, or somebody's gonna be cleaning your culo out in fucking prison, alright? Stop fucking around with me. I'm not your average fucking Joe, and I don't put up with tyrants. From whom all legitimate authority springs, and the people collectively acting through the medium of constitutions created such governmental agencies endow them with such power. If we endow them with such power, we can take that shit away. That's right. You have all the fucking power. You got the whole world in your motherfucking hands, and subject them to such limitations as in their wisdom will best promote the What is a constitution? It is the form of government delineated by the mighty hand of who? That's right, ladies and gentlemen, look in the motherfucking mirror. You got all the power. In which certain first principles of fundamental laws are established. A constitution is designated as a supreme enactment. A fundamental act of legislation by the people of the state. A constitution is legislation direct from the people. All right. Doesn't say the legislator, doesn't say the Supreme Court, doesn't say the bankers. It's by us, ladies and gentlemen, for us, by us. All right. Acting in their sovereign capacity. Son of a bitch, there's that word again everybody's so frightful of. Oh, he claims to be a sovereign. He's one of those sovereign citizens. No, motherfucker, he reads books and he knows who the fuck he is. Leave him alone. While a statute is legislation from their representatives. Whose representatives? You don't have any representatives. For-profit corporations selling you motherfuckers out as slaves, banking off of you literally. They have pledged you as fucking collateral, and they call you chattel just to insult your dumb ass, and you don't know it yet. What do you mean chattel, Derek? Well, why don't you go have a look at what the Social Security Administration and gentlemen, subject to limitations prescribed by the superior. The question is not what power the federal government ought to have, but what powers, in fact, have been given by the people. Son of a bitch. You mean I'm the boss? Why are we asleep at the wheel? What the fuck is wrong with us? Why haven't we told these knuckleheads to pull their heads out of their asses or swing from a fucking rope? You know what I'm saying? The federal union is a government of delegated powers. It has only such as are expressly conferred upon it, and such as are reasonably to be implied from those granted, all right? In this respect, we differ radically from nations where all legislative power without restrictions of limitation is vested in the parliament or other legislative body subject to no restrictions except the distinction of its members. The people themselves have in their power effectually to resist usurpation. That's exactly what's happened for about the last 100 years. Usurpation. They have proclaimed your power while telling you that you are their fucking servant. Get to work, you little fucking vagrants. You're our little tax slaves. Get to work. Cracking the whip on your ass and never understanding what the hell actually happened to this illusion called freedom. Well, I'll tell you what happened. We fell asleep at the fucking wheel, and the servants started putting their muddy fucking boots on our coffee table and giving us orders. Like morons, we started getting them fucking coffee, and they became accustomed to it. And now they try to lord over us. Well, it's time to turn the fucking table. It's time to kick that servant out the fucking house, because they ain't fucking washing dishes, and they ain't fucking prepping the bed, and they're not vacuuming the floor anymore. It's time for them motherfuckers to go, without being driven to an appeal in arms, all right? So, when they act ultra-virus, mixed war against the Constitution, you do realize we can act vietus arms, and we can literally march them out of our fucking public buildings, right? Now, that's a last resort, because reasonable people would try to settle this amicably and just say, look, you got one or two options. You can get on a fucking boat and go back over to the Queen of England, who you fucking serve so happily over here, or you could just remove yourself from office and go live your life somewhere else and quit fucking with people, right? An act of usurpation is not obligatory. It is not law, and any man may be justified in his resistance by all fucking means necessary. You notice how we don't have any school shootings? 4 years Trump was in office. There wasn't a fucking school shooting, not a fucking one. Isn't that fucking amazing? Back to having Democrats in the fucking house, and wouldn't you know it, school shooting after school motherfucking shooting. That's just a fucking amazing. And yet, we're going to send billions of dollars over to fucking whatever other fucking country, the Ukraine, right? And yet we haven't been intelligent enough to put fucking U.S. military armed forces at our school doors to protect the fucking children, the most valuable asset of any nation, the young, impressionable minds. Shows you how much they really give a fuck about your family and your kids, doesn't it? And what would that cost us? Pennies compared to the billions we send to other fucking nations. When's the last time you can think that Russia, China, or any other country sent billions of dollars in aid to us? Never. Not fucking once, all right? Just think about that for a fucking minute. Let him be considered as a criminal by the general government, yet only his fellow citizens can convict him. Unfortunately, that's a dangerous fucking territory, because our fellow citizens are dumber than a box of fucking rocks. But they are waking up. There is fucking hope. Pray to the Heavenly Father that he shines some fucking light down on these people and get them to use their fucking brain. They are his jury, and if they pronounce him innocent, not all powers of Congress, the legislator, or any other bullshit edicts can hurt him. And innocent they certainly will pronounce him if the supposed law he resisted was an act of usurpation. Unfortunately, in the public school system, dumbing down people, they don't teach you guys that shit. But I'm here to do that. I'm here to correct what you may have missed as you were growing up. But it cannot be assumed that the framers of the Constitution and the people who adopted it did not intend that, which is the plain import of the language used. When the language of the Constitution is positive and free from all ambiguity, All courts are not at liberty by a resort to the refinements of legal learning to restrict its obvious fucking meanings. What the fuck does that mean? That means if you went to school to be a lawyer to learn how to manipulate the language and bullshit people and fuck them over, it doesn't fucking matter because the Constitution was written in plain English. It's not vague. It's not ambiguous. It says what the fuck it says, and it says that you guys are fucking tyrannical. And in the 13th Amendment, the true 13th Amendment, it says none of those cotton-picking rat weasel bastards are allowed to be in office. Boy, did we fuck up when we allowed that shit to happen. To avoid hardships of particular cases, we must accept the Constitution as it reads when its language is unambiguous. For it is. Now, let me just ask you something. What is so fucking ambiguous about uninfringed? Okay? Uninged. Okay? Shall not infringe upon. Okay? Shall not be infringed. It's pretty fucking cut and dry. I don't think you can twist that any other way. Yet, educated idiots would lead you to believe that the word infringed doesn't mean what you think it does. So the whole thing is a con artist game. If they can bullshit you into believing that infringed doesn't mean what you know damn good and well it means, well then, they can infringe upon anything they fucking want because you have given consent. For it is the mandate of the sovereign powers. In this state, as well as in all republics, it is not the legislation, however transcended its powers, who are supreme, but the people, and to suppose that they may violate the fundamental laws is, as has been most eloquently expressed, to affirm that the deputy is greater than his principal, that the servant is above his master, that the representatives of the people are superior to the people themselves. I think it's time to tell them to get the fuck out of our house. They don't belong there anymore. Do the same thing Jesus Christ did when he turned over the money changer's table and said, "You have desecrated my Father's house." Well, we think it's about time we step in there and say, "You have desecrated the people's house long enough. Pack your shit and get the fuck out." That the men acting by virtue of delegated powers may do, not only what, then, powers do not authorize, but what they forbid. There have been powerful hydraulic pressures throughout our history that bear heavily on the court to water down constitutional guarantees and give the police the upper hand. Oh yeah, you want to know why? Because they're private for-profit corporations operating under municipalities through a charter that says that they're bound by the Constitution, yet they seemingly abscond from. Why? Because the people allow it. That's why it happens. The same reason a dog licks his nuts, because the people allow it, right? It's just nature. Remember, power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts abso-motherfucking-lutely. You don't let a dog beg at the table. Why? Because if you allow it to happen, he will continue to do that, and eventually he's going to steal a hot dog from your kid, which may cause you to reprimand that dog. But in all actuality, the real one who violated the hierarchy is you by never disciplining them in the first place, so they don't beg, right? Because if you had done your job, the dog wouldn't be stealing from the table. Same fucking theory applies to government. If we had done our job, the little scoundrels wouldn't be stealing from the fucking table. That hydraulic pressure has probably never been greater than it is today. Yet, if the individual is no longer to be a sovereign, if the police can pick him up whenever they do, like they do, they do not like the cut of his jib. Whenever they do not like the cut of his jib, if they can seize and search him, hide their discretion, by their discretion, we enter a new regime. The decision to enter it should be made only after a full debate by the people of this country. Now, we'll come back a little bit later and I'll finish this. It's a really good gig here. And I'll continue to share my screen. Unfortunately, Facebook's screwing me. I've been on the internet all fucking night long. I haven't had any problems. But every time I get on here to give you guys some solid information, I continually get screwed with. But I appreciate your time. I appreciate your love. And we'll see you soon.